Today in the episode, at the night on December 31st, Ukraine successfully targeted Russian strategic sites. Russian petrodollars are ablaze. Terrorist remains one no matter what. Russia continues murdering civilians in Ukraine, including children. Trump's envoy to NATO, Whitaker, does not believe Putin. Did Ukraine send those drones at Putin's residence? Putin is craving more war. Analysts note that Moscow not only insists on territorial concessions, but also on fulfilling broader demands toward Ukraine, NATO, and the West in general. On the night December 31st, Ukraine launched a series of powerful precision strikes on Russian strategic sites. Again, for those Russians may be watching, strategic sites, not civilian, like the one in the Krasnodar Oblast, the Tuapse oil refinery and maritime terminal were targeted successfully, sparking a large-scale fire and damaging port infrastructure. Simultaneously, drones struck the Temp Rozreserve facility in the Yaroslavl Oblast, setting fuel storage tanks ablaze. In general, Ukraine carried out a record number of strikes against Russian energy facilities this December, according to Bloomberg. At least 26 have targeted oil refineries, tankers, and both maritime and pipeline infrastructure, marking the highest intensity of such operations since the war began. The drone and missile campaign is significantly mounting pressure on Russian oil exports and choking the flow of petrodollars. Estimates suggest Russia's oil and gas revenue share in its national budget will plummet to a historic low of 23%. And more is coming. Such strikes have expanded to offshore sites, the ports of Taman and Rostov, and the particular vessels of Shadow Fleet. Meanwhile, Russia continues its relentless bombardment of Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, despite ongoing diplomatic pressure from the United States. Blackout hits Moscow region. Locals report that before the large-scale power outage in the Moscow region, sounds of drones were heard. Now, it is known that about 600,000 subscribers were left without electricity. But Russian local authorities says the reason of power outage, technical malfunction, typical Russian lie in such situations. In 2025, the Security Service of Ukraine showed incredible effectiveness in hitting Russian war machine. The enemy received strong and accurate blows where it least expected them. In the next story, the most striking operations of Security Service of Ukraine in this year.
Operation Web demonstrated the scale and pinpoint precision of our strikes. In just a few hours, the enemy lost 41, a strategic aviation aircraft worth over $7 billion. In the Bay of Novorossiysk, Sapsi Baby underwater drones struck a Caliber missile carrier, a Varshiyenka-class submarine. The third strike on the Crimean Bridge became a continuation of the SBU's signature operations. As a result of the powerful explosion, its supports were seriously damaged. Long-range strikes on Russian oil refineries have reduced the aggressor's oil exports by more than 30%. The enemy's Shadow Fleet did not go unnoticed either. The Security Service of Ukraine is systematically reducing the enemy's military potential, taking out their equipment worth billions of dollars, both at the front and deep behind enemy lines.
Because Russia is a terrorist state and so it acts accordingly, the Russian army's terror against Ukraine's civilian population continues. Odesa and the surrounding areas are under fire this time and again. Last night, enemy forces attacked the region with drones. Houses in residential area damaged. 6 people injured. 3 of them are children. The youngest was only 7 months old. Warehouses and logistics centers were also targeted, causing fires. Part of the regional center was left without electricity, water, and heat, according to local authorities. Russians are again targeting the region's civilian and energy infrastructure in most densely populated areas. 10 substations in the Odesa region in December were destroyed or damaged. Russia also have targeted 25 energy facilities in the region since the beginning of the year. Russian forces also attacked the Kyiv region last night. A multi-story residential building was damaged in the city of Bila Tserkva. 2 civilians were injured with shrapnel wounds, according to local authorities. Russia continues to press on Ukraine on the front. 149 combat clashes were recorded in the past 24 hours, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Ukrainian Defense Forces repelled 35 assaults by Russian occupiers. There were 18 in Kostiantynivka direction and 10 in Liman. Fierce fighting is also ongoing in the Huyai-Paye sector of the front. There, Ukrainian defenders repelled 24 attacks by Russian troops. U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker casts doubts on Putin's accusations. Whitaker casted doubt on December 30th on Russia's accusation that Ukraine attacked Russia's dictator's Putin's residence, saying he wants to see U.S. intelligence on the incident first. All right, here is a summary of the whole thing in easy points for you. First, Putin says on December 29th that Ukraine had attacked his residence in the Novgorod region with 90 drones, with not a single local blogger or anyone at all in the whole region of Russia, where Putin's luxury hideaway is located. No one but Putin saw it or heard it, let alone filmed it. Second, Ukraine denies the falsified accusations during a peace negotiations that are important for Ukraine, calling it what it is, a complete fabrication to justify further Russian aggression and avoid said peace talks. Third, Trump claims Putin told him of the attack personally and expressed anger, but the White House and intelligence agencies remain tight-lipped. Fourth, U.S. Ambassador Matthew Whitaker questions Russia's claim of a Ukrainian drone attack on Putin's residence, but awaiting U.S. intelligence confirmation.
It seems to me a little indelicate to be this close at a peace deal, Ukraine really wanting to get a peace deal done, and then to do something that would be viewed as reckless or not helpful. So we're going to get to the bottom of the intelligence.
You don't say, Mr. Envoy. Look who's talking now, Putin. He says Russia would retaliate and that its negotiating stance would toughen in the talks. Toughen. That means what? All of Ukraine, Baltic states, and also Poland. But sure, let's wait for American intelligence data. For now, we only have one thing: logic and common sense.
Almost a day passed, and Russia still hasn't provided any plausible evidence to its accusations of Ukraine's alleged attack on Putin's residence. And they won't, because there's none. No such attack happened. Such reactions to Russia's baseless manipulative claims only play into Russian propaganda and encourage Moscow for more atrocities and lies. We call on all states to act responsibly and refrain from responding to unverified claims. This undermines the constructive peace process that has been advancing lately. Andrii Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on X.
Maybe you heard of the sword of Damocles. It refers to an impending, ever-present danger or doom that threatens someone in a position of power or privilege. Downgrade power for dictatorship and upgrade the sword for drones, and you'll clearly see why usurper and dictator Putin sees danger literally everywhere. Today, in the last day of 2025, Romania announced its €50 million contribution to the US-led Pearl, Priority Acquisition List for Ukraine's Defense Initiative. PURL was created to help Ukraine to strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities by purchasing US-made weapons, reinforcing its ongoing military and humanitarian support, including F-16 pilot training and support for Ukrainian refugees, And now Romania solidified its commitment to Ukraine's security and European stability. And now Romania has officially joined a key U.S. coordinated military support mechanism for Ukraine, becoming part of a growing international bloc pledging direct financial contributions to Kyiv's defense. The €50 million commitment, confirmed by Romania's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and announced by Foreign Minister Oana Toiu.
Romania joins the Pearl mechanism to support Ukraine's defense. The government of Romania has adopted a decision to join the states contributing to the United States proposal regarding the Priority Acquisition List for Ukraine's defense, Pearl, with a contribution of €50 million alongside the majority of European allies and other like-minded states. Oana Toiu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, on X.
To summarize such a move is really easy. It is cheaper, faster, and safer to collectively fund a proxy fighting for your collective values than to do it on your own. As simple as that. Thank you, Romania. Despite positive comments of U.S. President Donald Trump about the conversation with Putin, Russian dictator is not that kind of person to be trusted, said Ukrainian president. Volodymyr Zelensky noted that Kremlin does not want peace, and its statements are nothing more than a way of communicating with the United States. Their goal is to try to get rid of Western sanctions. How Putin is trying to disrupt negotiations? In our next story for you.
Putin does not seek peace. The Kremlin's goals in the war against Ukraine go far beyond capturing individual territories, in particular the Donetsk region. Analysts note that it is indicative that now Moscow not only insists on territorial concessions, but also on fulfilling broader demands toward Ukraine, NATO, and the West in general.
Recent Kremlin statements are at odds with several of the positions that Trump presented as the basis for ending the war. The Kremlin has repeatedly rejected European-led security guarantees for Ukraine. Kremlin officials have also called for any future peace agreement to address Russia's demands that NATO cease expansion and roll back its borders. A peace deal that does not address Russian demands of NATO and the West outside of Ukraine will not satisfy Russia, nor lead to a lasting peace that can normalize Russian-European or U.S.-Russian relations. From a report by the Institute for the Study of War.
Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War note that Russia is now aimed at changes in the European security system and reducing NATO influence. Putin's new statements contradict U.S. President Donald Trump's proposals within the peace agreement. In particular, the Kremlin continues to reject security guarantees for Ukraine proposed by Europe.
No, not a ceasefire. He feels that, look, they're fighting and to stop, and then if they have to start again, which is a possibility, he doesn't want to be in that position. I understand that position. The president feels strongly about that or something. But I think we're finding ways that we can get around that.
Putin does not want peace. On the contrary, he states that he will go further, noted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
That's why, of course, we need dialogue of and pressure from President Trump. Sanctions, dialogue, he has some instruments, and he personally can do it, I think. And I think that he's trying to do it, trying to bring this peace. I don't trust Putin, and he doesn't want success for Ukraine, really. He doesn't want. He can say it. I believe that he can say such words to President Trump. I believe in it, that he can say it, but it's not truth, really. He doesn't want to have from President Trump more pressure with sanctions and etc. And he can say that I want success for Ukraine and I'm ready to give them cheap electricity. Really, between us, we don't need cheap, this energy because we paid so great, this price, our lives. It's not about energy. We don't need anything from them. That's why I think it's messages for President Trump, yes, to find a way how to communicate with him.
The Russian and Ukrainian sides still do not find agreement on the issue of managing the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant occupied by Russian troops, as well as on the status of the partially Russian-occupied Donbass in eastern Ukraine. Despite Europe and the USA's attempts in the peace negotiation process, Putin's appetites remain too disproportionate, stated the president of Lithuania. Gitanas Nausėda noted that the next few weeks will show whether Russia wants peace and is ready for full-fledged negotiations.
However, so far we see an extremely limited reaction from the Kremlin, and this does not allow full optimism. Russia's appetites in peace negotiations on Ukraine are too great. They can lead to a situation where these conditions will simply be unacceptable for one of the sides. Either if the conditions are favorable for Russia, it will be unacceptable for Ukraine, or vice versa. Therefore, I am still cautious, even quite cautious, looking at the outcome of this possible process. Gitanas Nausėda, President of Lithuania, from a publication by LRT.
Russia's appetites are growing, and the probability of a Russian invasion of NATO countries is becoming more real than ever, Europeans believe. Therefore, alliance member states, primarily the Baltic countries, are increasingly strengthening their defense capability. In particular, Latvia has completed the construction of a 280-kilometer fence along the border with Russia. It lasted several years and became one of the country's largest infrastructure projects in national security. Earlier, Lithuania already erected a barrier on the border with Belarus, stretching almost 145 kilometers. Reported by Yulia Hranovska, UATV News.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of News Digest. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next episode.